Cutie Patooties! Last year on Valentine's Day, I kind of got this surge of inspiration to make some Valentine's Day inspired pieces. I had a vision for a portrait of a woman with some flowers kind of in front of her face, blocking some of it out, but the core of the flowers were umbrellas with that could even drip on the woman. So out of those ideas came the Valentine Cuties, as I call them, and I do say cuties because I was in fact do. So in honor of this year's Valentine's Day, I wanted to take you on the process of making them as I yap about all the emotional and creative growth that was attached to it. So let's go.
First off though, I started by doing a few studies of lilies, orchids, pomegranates, and portraits in my sketchbook to let the elements flow better together in my head and concretize my ideas before doing the thumbnails. Once I was satisfied with those, I took them into Procreate to refine and finalize them. With the sketches done, I figured I wanted them to be mixed media in my cleaner sketchbook while not being the most precious about it. Joke's on me since it still took like 4 months and then some to finish. Of course, I started with taping the edges. A trick to not make your masking tape rip your paper is to stick it first to your clothes to make it slightly less adhesive. I ended up leaving mine taped for months, so like my paper still ripped. Then I figured I'd try tracing over my iPad to save time. Big mistake, that process was a pain and I wanted to rip my hair out. I should have just printed it and used the light box. But we pushed through. We made a very quick and light sketch to minimize the iPad tracing time, to then refine it while keeping said iPad up as a reference instead. I then laid down an underpainting layer of sorts in watercolor to set the mood of the pieces before doing some color blocking. This piece was kind of a proof of concept to me, but not necessarily in the way you might think, more so of an ideological one. Let me give you a little context. Even though I was always artistic and creative even, I never considered myself imaginative, as in that I always struggled with coming up with interesting, quote-unquote, ideas. Which is why animation felt way more like a safer route to me, as the whole ideation process and creation process didn't only depend on me, but that's a story for another time. However, in the last couple of years, since I've been laid off from the animation industry in fact, my relationship to art and imagination has been shifting. As someone with much performance anxiety, I'm sure it comes as no surprise if I tell you that I, eventually, and pretty early on, was always creating to perform in some type of way. Everything had to be perfect, shareable, and was always held to my highest standards. Obviously, as my skills grew, those expectations and self-critic grew as well. The perfectionism and pressure I put myself grew and grew. I'm sure you can predict what happened next. I burnt out, got R-block, discarded any ideas because they weren't good enough, and I had identity crisis over all that. Not long after I was laid off, my personal life also fell apart, which obviously meant I was pretty much down in the dumps at first. But fast forward as I began to climb back up, I saw a shift happening. More on that in a second. Let's touch point on the process for a bit. I wanted the vibe to be very dreamy and fuzzy, so that's why I started with those loose, undefined strokes in watercolor before doing any kind of details. Moving on to some more color blocking to highlight some focal points of the pieces, as well as blocking in some values for shadows. I eventually started using acrylic markers as well, especially on the lilies at first, to give them some contrast from the softness of the faces. To survive that period in my life where everything felt like it was the end of the world, I had to go through a few mindset and life changes. One of them being that I had to stop running away from my feelings and I had to actually let them in and feel them, which I didn't even know you were supposed to feel them in your body. I thought it was all a mental thing. Back in 2024, I also did an abstract painting, my first one actually, where each and every color was tied to an emotion. That really pushed me along in that emotional process. But as I was beginning to let my emotions in, I also started being more free creatively. By letting my emotions in and accepting them, I was also accepting and giving more chances to my ideas. And ideas are a funny thing. When you start listening to them, like really listening to them rather than just dismissing them, they start to grow and multiply. Soon enough, I had too many ideas that I had to write them down before they escaped and I forgot them. Writing them down was also a beautiful way to acknowledge them. So, growing and going through hardship and heartbreak led me to not only letting my emotions in, but also being more in tune with them, which led to being more creative. I'm still on that journey. I'm still learning that not everything has to be a masterpiece and that I can let myself create what I feel or want to, even if it's silly, even if it's not perfect. This duo of portraits definitely challenged me on that. Even though I was following the thread of my creativity, I also struggled a lot with trying to make them perfectly how I envisioned them. That definitely frustrated me throughout the process and even stressed me out since I was filming it and because I grew attached to the concept as I was executing it. That led me to having to take a few steps back, to slow down and take longer, as in weeks long, breaks and not even film certain part of the process to help me manage those expectations I was building and subjecting myself to. So I'm not quite at the end of the road yet, but I'm making progress, which is all we can hope for. I feel like English teachers would probably have a blast psychoanalyzing all the elements from these illustrations. So if you want to give it a go, please don't hesitate to do so in the comments. I'd love to know how you interpret it.
So last time I worked on these cuties, I did this. This being that pitch black line art, which I hate. I didn't really trust the process and went ahead and did the line art because I was excited about it. And then the whole time I was doing it, I could feel that I was messing it up. But I kept going, being like, no, I can fix this. Now you have to trust the process and keep going at it. It'll feel better after. But it doesn't. Now I feel like that's way too dark. Like if you see this, I like that the lashes are dark, but that's because I feel like this is way more balanced and appealing. So now let's actually backtrack, do something else. Let's try to fix it. So yeah, let's see what we can do.
From there, I had the pressure to fix things to make the duology how I envisioned it could be. So there were some back and forth, but also kind of a lot of stress. So some parts of the process are missing.
So this right now looks very scary, but it's to build back upon. So we'll try to rematch what we had with the watercolor, and then we build it with not as stark line art. I'm still not sure what to do with the hair, if I want to keep it dark, so I'll leave that for later. Now, I know I said I like this one better, but the lashes, the line art was still too thick, which I think is most of the reason why I hated it, even on this one. So I'm still gonna go back over it, and then it'll look more cohesive anyways. Coming back, revolving door.
After painting over the parts I didn't like, I started by redrawing the face and ironically drew the eye on the left of the left cutie way bigger than intended. So when I started painting it again, I had to try and fix it as I was painting, which is one of those segments that was stressing me out, so I didn't film it. I then worked on rebuilding the watercolor washes and hair details. Once I was finally satisfied with the faces, I honed in on building the details in the flowers and pomegranates. After all those details were finished, I was done, or so I thought, so I finally removed the tape. But after sitting with it for a while, literally like 2 months or so, I decided to add a ponytail to the left portrait. I first did a trial run in Procreate because I wasn't gonna mess up again. And I also added some hair highlights. I really like how that turned out, as I feel like that made the piece much more balanced visually.
When looking for a title, because the cutie on the left is blind, I really thought the phrase love is blind. But did you know that that's actually not the full quote? It comes from Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, and it reads as, "But love is blind and lovers cannot see the pretty follies that themselves commit." But I didn't really resonate with that, and that wasn't really the vibe I was ultimately trying to convey with the piece either. So after some head scratching, I came up with maybe love is blind because lovers are supposed to feel, which I especially liked with the context of the whole feeling your feelings aspect tied to making up this duology. Making these portraits were definitely a challenge, both on a skill and creative problem solving side, but also in an emotional growth kind of achievement type way. I'm so happy with the way they turned out, and the way that got me there was definitely full of lessons. By now, I made prints of them for the market I've been to so far, and because I love them so much as a pair, I even made a sticker of the title that I gave out as a freebie when they're bought together. When my website is up, Big Plans in the Making, you'll definitely be able to get them as well. If you want first news on that, don't hesitate to follow me on Instagram, since that's probably where I'll update about it first. And I hope you liked how they turned out as much as I do, and the creation of them. If you like this video, don't hesitate to leave a like and to subscribe, because I've got a lot more planned for the rest of the year. See ya! And the way that got me. And the other one is closing your eyes anyways.
It's still a little bit bad. Okay, bye.